loyal sons. We'll get 'em on the run, boys. We got 'em on the run. Yes, we are loyal sons. We'll get 'em on the run, boys. We got 'em on the run.
Hey everyone, I'm Molly Moran, better known as Luck of the Irish. This is HLS TV, and I'm here with Ryan Ritter, the editor-in-chief of Loyal Sons. And we are going to be talking about Rice and kind of doing an introduction to Michigan. So this past weekend, Notre Dame had their season opener against the Rice Owls. And Ryan, what were your thoughts on the game?
The first thing was it's great to actually have a blowout. As Irish fans, most of our openers do not go that way. Last one we had was that magical 2012 season where we blew out Navy. And, you know, beyond that, the one that felt the most like it beyond those two was probably the start of the Weiss era. So these are very few and far between. So, Weiss has been mentioned on the first episode of HLS TV. I can't believe that. But
crazy.
Yeah, it was great to see that. It was a relaxing game. It was enjoyable. It was good to see Golson come back, and you know, I think it calmed a lot of nerves to go to Michigan. What were your thoughts on the game?
Well, I think at the conclusion of the game, the first thing I realized was that it was a really smooth game. There were a few penalties, rather. So I think that always helps to keep the momentum going. And I hate to admit it, kind of skeptical of Golson coming back just because so many people had him hyped up, and I was a little worried. I didn't want to jump too quickly on the bandwagon and get really excited, but I was pleasantly surprised. I just thought it was a really fun game to watch.
Yeah, well, as far as Golson goes, that was a legitimate concern. His first two series, that he looked awful. I mean, you could tell that it was Russ. It was just Rice, and it was. I know the NBC was talking. Just give him some quick, easy routes. And Notre Dame gave those to him, but you know, he still wasn't converting. So that's definitely a legitimate concern. I think once that first touchdown drive was from that point forward, he's like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember how to do this again, and then he just
exactly kind of found his groove, and everybody, the offense kind of started to gel a little bit. So
right.
Made me feel better.
Yes, and that's always good because Golson coming back. That's the biggest. That's what we've been looking forward to, and to actually see the Brian Kelly offense. And I felt like we really saw that. It was. It wasn't super up tempo like an Oregon or even USC doing something crazy like over 100 plays, but you know the pace felt quicker. It felt more like the Brian Kelly offenses that we were promised back when he first came over from Cincinnati. It felt a lot more, you know, up tempo, high scoring, so that was great.
Yep. So we've talked a little bit about Golson and the offense. What are some of your thoughts on the defense?
Well, let's start with the good news. The good news is, man, that defensive line was great. I was actually, to truth be told, I was more nervous, even with the suspensions and the secondary with Russell being out, was more nervous about how the front seven was going to react. I knew Jalen Smith was a known. In my mind, Sheldon Day was a known as far as being able to be good, solid players. Beyond that, and with the brand new scheme and knowing it was going to be blitz happy, I just didn't know what to think. And man, I was blown away. We were flying to the ball. It seemed like we always had 3 or 4 Navy jerseys all over the ball. So I was pleasantly surprised. Now, the bad news was the secondary definitely had some holes. But it really, truth be told, it wasn't too bad. Obviously, one of them cost us a touchdown. Safeties definitely didn't have the communication. A lot of that's probably due to Collinsworth also going down with an injury right before the game. And so, being able to, that's definitely the weakness, especially going towards Michigan, that it's probably the most glaring, but at least we got some positives we can look at. What did you think on the defensive side?
Definitely, I agree. I was really impressed. As you said, with the front seven, I am really concerned about the secondary, though. But I think, if anything, at least we know our weakness. We can work on it. Still don't know what's happening with those suspensions, really. So who knows? But
that's such a dark cloud hanging over everything right now.
I don't know about that, but no, all in all, I know people are, going to keep throwing out it was just Rice, but honestly, if you can't do it against Rice, I don't know who you're going to do it against. So I was pretty impressed. So I'm excited going forward.
Yeah, I mean, because what was let's see if I'm getting my years right. I believe USF was 20. It was
Yeah.
2011, so it was
Hmm.
just USF, and not
No,
only was it
exactly.
just USF. I mean, granted they were a BCS level team, but man, they went on to have a terrible season,
Yeah.
and that game was an absolute disaster. I mean, on all
Yeah,
sides of the
honestly,
ball.
I mean, teams are just always going to play their best against Notre Dame, so I don't care who it is. I'm always a little worried. So,
Yeah, I mean, ask Ohio State how that game against Navy went. I mean, they
yeah,
had a huge
exactly.
game.
They gave them a little bit of a scare, so yeah. Okay, so offense, defense. I also want to touch on special teams because it had a little bit of a pulse during the race game, which was exciting, right?
Yeah, it started with the kickoff return, which was like, okay, all right, we've seen that before. It's like, but are we actually going to move a punt forward? And man,
Right.
Cody Riggs and Greg Bryan both, they looked awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even I thought one of the highlights for me was even though he screwed up, was Greg Bryan misread the punt, kind of
Yeah.
muffed fielding it on a hop, but still went down, chased it, and made three guys miss.
Yeah.
That's I know a lot's been made of we really have to get our gunners blocking better, and they definitely did that game, but you also need that dynamic return man. You got to get somebody that can make somebody miss, and
Yeah.
once you get those first two to miss, the field's wide open from that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing Riggs be able to do that and see Bryant be able to do it, all of a sudden we've gone from, well, who in the hell is going to take the punt to, wow, we got two weapons back there. This is great.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just good. I mean, I felt like in past seasons, you can't start every drive from your 2 yard line. So I was just excited to see a little bit of life back there.
Yeah, it almost felt like I'd actually have to take a look at the field possession, but it almost felt like we were either very, very close to the plus territory on the right side of the 50, or we were almost at midfield just about every single drive. And man, does that take a
Right.
lot of pressure off the offense right off the bat.
Exactly. Yeah. So good stuff there.
Yes, we have a punt return. We can
I
celebrate.
know. I know. Something that's kind of, maybe you shouldn't have to be excited about, but we are, so that's good. So, I mean, we've discussed, a lot of aspects of the team and everything. So, who would you pick as kind of your individual MVPs, maybe of the game?
Well, I mean, Golson, you get 5 touchdowns, and you,
Obviously.
you break Notre Dame record for rushing TDs by a quarterback, you're going to get
Hmm.
MVP type treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked great. I couldn't be happier with the performance that he had. He caught a lot of national eyes too, which
Hmm.
was saying something when you have Kenny Hill out at Texas A&M, replacing Johnny Football, the former Heisman winner, and you have Jameis Winston, struggling a little bit. So with all the eyes there, it was really cool to see Golson. I think he was he was definitely on the radar just because it's Notre Dame and it's his first game back, but I don't think people quite expected that performance out of him. So that's the obvious one. If I got to
Yeah.
go a not so obvious, I mean, I'm giving it to Greg Bryant because not just with the punt return, but man, he just seemed like he had a secondary gear because when we did the ratings, Keith Arnold, I put Folston as the top player. I was so high on him after last season.
Hmm.
I wasn't really sure what to think about Bryant, but man, he showed me so much in this game. He just looked like he had the gear. He was hitting the holes hard, making people miss, running with power. So
Yeah,
those
I
would be
agree.
my
He's
two
going to be fun to
picks.
watch. Yeah.
Who would you go with? Same picks, or do you have somebody different in mind?
Definitely Golson. I was super impressed with him, and I'm so excited. I'll be at the Michigan game. You will too, right?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, I'm so like I can't. If he has some of those same passes and rushing, I'm probably gonna get weak in the knees. Seriously, like I was just watching, like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like
I mean, what he was doing was quite sexy out there on the football field.
it was. I mean, I was getting a little warm. So yes, definitely Golson, and yeah, I was really impressed by Greg Bryant, but yeah, I don't know. I might just have to go with the same too. But there's really, I don't know. I think I'm still on like that first game high, to be honest, like beginning of the season. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
everything's. I mean, we're undefeated. I mean, we could take this
Right?
second
I
on
know.
the road
Crazy,
now.
crazy, exciting stuff. So yeah, but I did mention Michigan. We're both going. We know that that's who we have up next. What are some of your initial thoughts on the game on Saturday?
Well, I subjected myself to the first half of them playing Appalachian State, and
Okay.
then I subjected myself to a rewatch of it. The crazy things I do for football blogging, but
Right.
really I mean the main thing that I took out of what I saw was number one, their offense does appear, and it's hard to kind of gauge it, but it does appear they're leaning more towards a power-ish side. There was a lot more, not just running formations, but power running formations. I saw a lot of traditional I formations. There was fullbacks in the game, so
Mhm.
for all our old school Notre Dame fans that
Yeah,
love the
what's
fullbacks, yeah,
that?
they featured them. They had a handful of two tight end sets. They ran quite a bit of pistol as well. I mean, they didn't take a whole lot of snaps under center, but there definitely seemed to be a focus on the run. But not only that, they moved Funchess from tight end to wide receiver, and really that guy is such a focus now. Now,
Yeah.
when trying to figure out what their offense is going to be like with a new offensive coordinator, I kind of had to look at the beginning of the game for more of what they would try to do, because once they were so far ahead, they were just kind of coasting and running the game out. But Funches is going to be Gardner's main target, and it really reminded me, again, here comes another Weiss reference, but kind of I have two big guys, in Maurice Stovall and Jeff Samardzija. They're huge. Cornerbacks are about a good 6 inches shorter than them, so I'm going to throw it to him, and I'm going to have him make a play. He's going to run people over. He's going to win
Right.
jump balls, and I think if I remember, he had either 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think it was 3. So he had a
Mhm.
huge game. So those are the two big takeaways. And the other one was, as far as the defensive side of the ball, was they're kind of like us. They're super, super aggressive. It reminded me a lot of watching Van Gorder's defense. They were blitzing on just about every single play that they could. And
Mhm.
even when the game was well in control into the second half, they were still blitzing on a good amount of plays. It wasn't nearly as heavy as the first half, but they were still doing it, especially if they thought they could get Appalachian State off the field. So it kind of has me thinking that's what we're going to see when Michigan comes and face off against us. We're going to see very heavy blitzing, and they're going to test Golson to see if he's ready to read those blitzes.
Yeah.
And Rice gave him some, but Michigan's going to be faster. They're going to be stronger. It's going to be a better pass rush. So
Yep.
that's what I'm looking at mainly. If I think if Golson can handle that, he's going to be able to really light Michigan up, because some of the
Mhm.
big plays that he had against Rice were plays that he created off of blitzes that he made happen, and people were extending routes. Honestly, it's kind of what Michigan did to us last year. Diaco
Mhm.
blitzed the house at him, and we couldn't contain Gardner, and all of a sudden passes are going over our heads. He's behind the defense, so that's going to be a similar battle. It's going to be very, very interesting to see two similar styles of defense in that game.
Yeah, it's always an exciting one. Always comes down to the wire, so I'm expecting the same. And I'm always thinking of football from kind of like the mental aspect too. So I mean, you figure you have Michigan, it's a night game, it's at Notre Dame, but I mean, it's always there's always a crowd involved, and I think I was obviously impressed with Golson the first game, so I'm excited to see what he can do. But I do worry a little bit because he wasn't always the best at closing out games last season. He did
Yeah,
have, or not last, you know what I mean?
in
When
2012,
he was
yes.
playing, yes. And, I mean, I know not everybody's a huge Tommy Rees fan, but he was able to come in and kind of get him out of a couple binds. So, and he did prove himself in the Rice game, so I'm not too worried about it, but it's always something that's kind of in the back of my head.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, because he looked in control of Navy, and then
Mm-hmm.
in Michigan he got yanked pretty early for Reeves, and that same security blanket isn't there. I mean, that's not to take away from what Zaire can do. I mean, the kid showed he
Right.
has all kinds of talent, but it's not the dependable. Yeah, I can put my upperclassman in. He's been in this
Mm-hmm.
situation before, so maybe
Right.
he's not as
That
physically
experience.
gifted, but like you said, it's a mental thing too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's going to be Golson's first big mental test, and he was
Mm-hmm.
able to evade Rice. What happens when he gets hit in the mouth, and he tries to chuck up a ball, and it's a lame duck and an interception instead of a touchdown. How does he
Yeah.
recover from that? Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I mean
Right.
that's the kind of game we could be looking at.
Mm-hmm. Either way, it should be exciting.
Oh,
I can't.
definitely.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to be there. So, yay! But so yeah. Do you have any score predictions that you're willing to throw out there? I know that gets kind of dicey, but
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out what my exact, because now, I nailed Rice dead on the head, so now everybody's gonna. Well,
Pressure.
it's like, okay, see if you could do it twice, Tex. But really, I see two different outcomes. One is that Golson is going to be the thorn in Michigan's side that Michigan's always been for us, and Michigan's going to try to throw everything at him, and Golson's hit the level we all hoped he hit, and this game actually for once will not be close in terms. It won't be a blowout, I don't think, but maybe like a two-score
Right.
win or something like that. I do see that as a
Some breathing
possibility.
room.
But I do see the other obvious possibility of, this is Michigan, and we always seem to play within, 2 points of each other, and
Yeah.
it'll be a very tight game. So, what do you think? You'll see.
Yeah, I know how I'd like it to go. I'd love for it to be, a little bit more breathing room, maybe, a touchdown or two. But I just think the Michigan game's always really close. I think they're just going to bring it. And, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. But I'd like for it to be. I'm calling it close, though.
Yeah, I don't blame you. With the way these games have gone back, hell, it was all the way back to, I think the last. I'm trying to remember the last time we got absolutely spanked. The Ty Willingham games are sticking out in my memory right now. Some of those embarrassments.
Yeah, we won't go there.
Yeah, and also the fact that it's the last game for
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to? Yeah, do we want to make any comments about that? This is the last scheduled meeting, they're saying. So.
Yeah, I mean, well.
Phrasing.
Last scheduled. It's going to be for a while. I mean, it's just the fact that. Really, the truth of the matter is, and it's unfortunate, Notre Dame kind of gets cast the bad guy of this because nobody wants to hear about the past history. Nobody wants to hear about Yost and, all the different times we didn't play and, that we only played twice within like a near 70-year span, things along those lines. But, it's the fact of who fired last, and kind of we fired last. But, it's just the fact of the way college football has gone. Once the Big Ten expanded and conferences started shuffling, the playoffs started happening, and Notre Dame had to start looking for a home. It wasn't going to be in the Big Ten. We knew that was for certain. I don't know if the Big Ten ever really thought that was going to happen. I don't know if I would say I like to think Delaney's smarter than that, but sometimes some of his moves, I question that. But, we have a commitment with the ACC, and along with our other rivalry games, I mean, quite honestly, it's a conference schedule. So we have that, and really, you got the 5 ACC games, and you got USC, you got Stanford, and you got Navy. So that's an 8-game conference schedule with 4 out-of-conference games, if you look at it from that traditional perspective. Now, the problem with the Big Ten is that they're going to go to a 9-game conference schedule. So now all of a sudden you got 3 out-of-conference games that Big Ten teams can schedule. And on top of that, the Big Ten's really regimented in when they want those games played. So there's not a whole lot of flexibility for their teams. So I know Notre Dame and Michigan is getting, the big, popping headlines, but, Purdue's almost going away. We're going to have trouble scheduling them. Michigan State's another one. And those are teams we've actually played on a more consistent basis. Yeah. So our usual partners in the Midwest, it's harder to find room to get them in because, Notre Dame we want to play that national schedule. We want to play Texas. We want to play Georgia. We want to get games like that in there. So, unfortunately, something had to give. It wasn't going to really work on Michigan's side. We already had cancellations out in the future that weren't going to happen. If I remember right, I think it's like 2017 or 2018 it was. So you have 2 games that were already going to be out. Now, Notre Dame, all of a sudden they have the ACC commitments coming in. So all of a sudden you got, a new landscape, and, Schwarbrick saw the writing on the wall, said, okay, I got a 3-year out. Let's go ahead and get out so we can make sure we can do the schedule thing with Texas, with Georgia, and all these other games we want in.
Yeah. Just doesn't make as good of a story though as us being chicken, so that doesn't get out there.
No, and to be honest, I mean, I gave Hoke hell. As soon as he made that, I gave him all kinds of hell. But I mean, he's talking to a bunch of alumni.
Right.
He's speaking to his constituents,
right.
And Hogue is a terrible, terrible, terrible football coach who somehow has Notre Dame's number. It's the most infuriating thing ever. But if you could say one good thing about him, it's that he knows how to be the quote-unquote Michigan man. He knows the right things to say. He knows how to get people fired up.
Exactly.
You know, because I remember back in the
Lloyd his audience.
yeah, and I remember in the Lloyd Carr era that you know, Michigan fans were kind of like, especially since Notre Dame was way down at that time, it's like, why do we even have these guys on our schedule? And that was the prevailing thought at the time. So it's just a different landscape. Both Notre Dame's much better. You know, Michigan's kind of on the downswing right now with Hoke era not going so well. So, you know, I understand that we're the bad guy and Hoke calling us chicken, but hey, I mean, it was real interesting to hear Kelly's words today in the press conference. He didn't want to say, you know, hey, you know, we're really excited about these other games. He called it like the silver lining that, you know, yeah, we lose Michigan, but we get all these other games. And at the end, he kind of jokes like, hey, I think I did it without getting in trouble, and just kind of joked and walked off.
Yeah. So I guess we've covered most of what we intended to cover in our first episode here. We talked about Rice. We kind of previewed Michigan a little bit. Is there anything else that you wanted to toss out there?
Unless you have like a burning hatred for Michigan that you just absolutely have to get out on the airwaves before we sign off.
I mean, just the fact they exist, you know? I don't really know. I mean, I just don't even think it's like worth my time to like really detail it. They're Michigan.
No, honestly though, I mean, do you see it as like a rivalry, or do you just hate them?
I just hate them. Like, I don't care who's playing Michigan. I just don't want Michigan to win, you know?
Yeah, I think that's what most people are. It's weird to have this mutual hatred. I mean, I guess in some ways you could consider it a rivalry because there's not really many other terms you could call it besides that. But
right.
I mean, they don't see us as like they see Ohio State.
Right.
We don't see them like we see Southern Cal. So it's such a weird position to be in, and it's going to be weird not to have it because God, I love Hate Week. It's so much fun to throw jabs at each other. So I'll be honest, I will miss that, but when I'm traveling to Austin or down to Athens, I'm probably not going to miss them too much. I'll be honest.
Yeah, there you go. Silver lining, right?
Oh yeah, it's the silver lining, as our politician head coach so eloquently said.
Yeah, it's the silver lining. But yeah, so guess that was our first installment here. We will be back. We're going to try to be back weekly. The first couple weeks are a little
yeah, because we do this thing. We like to go to the game, so
yeah, so we're going to be there. But because I'm going to Michigan and Purdue, so the schedule might be a little whatever, but we will be here weekly someday.
Yeah, it'll be up before the next game. That I can guarantee that much.
Promise that much, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we will see what happens Saturday, and we'll be here to talk about it after.
All right, sounds good. Let's go Irish. Kick the living crap out of the Skunk Bears.
Yes, let's do it. Sounds good.
Says we are her loyal sons.